Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alright, so I'm pretty sure you guys didn't come here to hear me speak, so I'm just going to get right into our intro. Sister Yasmin Mogahed received her BS degree in psychology and her master's in journalism and mass communications from the University of Wisconsin. After completing her graduate work, she taught Islamic studies and served as a sister's youth director for the Islamic Society of Milwaukee. She also worked as a writing instructor and a staff columnist for the Islam section of In Focus News. Currently, she's a writer for the Huffington Post and an internationally published editor where she focuses most of her work on spiritual and personal development. Sister Yasmin just launched her new book, Reclaim Your Heart, which will be available after the event, inshallah. You can visit her website, yasminmogahed.com, where you can find a collection of her articles, poetry, and lectures. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Sister Yasmin up to the podium.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. What do you love most? This question seems simple enough, but it is harder than you think to answer. Everyone in this room can say that they love God most. We can easily say this with our tongues, but what we can say with our tongues is not necessarily a reflection of what is in the heart. How can we get at what really is in the heart? How do we really know what we love most? Well, start with what we do know. Most people who've lived long enough know what it's like to love another person. Most people know that when someone loves another person, they can't stop thinking about them. Have you ever had a friend who was in love? Does he or she, are they able to think about or talk about anything else? Remembrance is a direct consequence of love, and it is never forced. When a person is in love, they don't have to set a reminder on their phone that tells them, okay, Saad, it's time to think about Sarah right now. Or, okay, Sarah, it's time to think about Saad. We laugh at even the thought. And yet, we have to set timers to remind us to remember God. Now, don't all go and kill your Salah reminders on your phone. I hope you understand the point that I'm making. We remember naturally what we love most. It is involuntary. We can't help it. We can't help but remember the one that we love. What else happens when someone loves another person? Well, when Sada asks Saad for something, he will go out of his way to do it. When a mother loves her child, no one has to pay her hourly for the time that she spends awake comforting that child. It is natural. It is natural to want to sacrifice for the one you love. It is natural to want to please them. We obey what we love, not out of obligation, out of love. It gives us pleasure to make the one that we love pleased. This is why, if you want to know what you love most, and believe me, everyone loves something. Look at what you sacrifice for. What do you give up sleep for? What do you give up money for? What do you think about all day? What makes you cry? What causes you the most anxiety at the very thought of losing? By answering these questions, you can start to see what you love most. And chances are, the answer to these questions has absolutely nothing to do with God. Chances are, it is school, or the man you love, the woman you're obsessed with, your spouse, your children, your job, your money, your status, what people are going to say or think of you, your image. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us in the Quran. And He says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قل إن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وإخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكن ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله فتربصوا حتى يأتي الله بأمره والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. Allah here is telling us, warning us of something. He says, say, if it be that your fathers, your sons, so your children, your brothers, your spouses, or your kindred, the wealth which you have gained, the business in which you fear decline, or the dwellings, so the houses, in which you delight, are dearer to you, more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His cause, then wait until Allah brings about His decision, and Allah guides not the rebellious ones. This is a very strong warning from Allah. Here Allah is saying, if you love any of these things, which by the way should be noted, all are halal. All are halal. This ayah does not talk about your girlfriend, it does not talk about your boyfriend, it does not talk about going to the club or drinking or smoking. It talks about your parents, your children, your halal job, your halal business, your halal house, your spouses. So these are people that are halal for you. And in fact, you're supposed to love them. So Allah is warning us in those things which it is halal to have and halal to love. But He's warning us that within those things can be a hidden fitna, a hidden test. Because we may come to love those things more or as we should only love Allah and His Messenger and striving in His cause. Now the question is, if you do that, then what? Well, here Allah is saying then what? A consequence. And it's a very frightening consequence because it's sort of, left unknown. Like when you were a kid and your mom wanted to threaten you and you do something wrong, if you do this or that, just wait and see what happens. That was scarier than giving you an actual consequence, right? Just wait and see. So just wait and see what happens. The consequence of loving something, even those things which are halal for us, more than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His cause, just wait and see the consequence. Because it will make you suffer. It isn't just about the consequence in the hereafter, but you will feel and know the consequence in this life. Because that which you love, as you should only love Allah, will be the cause of your greatest pain. Will be the cause of you not being able to sleep, of you crying all the time, of you being upset all the time, of you being angry and afraid and anxious all the time. You want to look at anxiety? Look at the heart of anxiety. What causes you to be so anxious? What causes you to get so angry? And you look at that and you see what is the core of that. It is the love of something of dunya. It is the love of something that you're so afraid of losing. And so that love, when it becomes the greatest love that you have, the thing which occupies your mind all day, and it is other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes the cause of your torment, and the cause of your anxiety, and the cause of your pain. So you feel the consequence now before the hereafter. Allah further warns us in the Quran and says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. Here Allah tells us, yet there are men, there are people who take for worship other than Allah, besides Allah, as equal with Him. They love them as they should only love Allah. يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. They love them as they should only love Allah. But those of faith are overflowing in their love for Allah. In this ayah, Allah is telling us, Allah is warning us against taking rivals with Allah. But what kind of a rival are we taking here? What kind of a rival is this ayah talking about? Are these people or things that we're praying to? They are not. Allah explains, يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. See, He says that they are andad, they are rivals. But what type of rival? يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, that they love them as they should only love Allah. So it is a rival in love. And then when He describes the believers, He says, أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. They are overflowing in their love for Allah. Their greatest love is for Allah. أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ, the greatest love of all. Now, how do we understand the difference? How do we understand the difference between loving in the right way and loving in the wrong way? And how do we understand when we've gotten into a situation where now there is something else other than Allah that is our greatest love? Well, the heart is the ruler. You see, human beings are all about love. As we said, we obey what we love. And love is the master of motivations. Even fear and hatred are born of love. We hate what deprives us of what we love. And we fear what threatens it. Whatever fills this lump of flesh called our hearts dictates how we act. So we have to be very, very careful what is filling our hearts. Now I'll give you an example. Because a lot of times we talk conceptually about love. We talk conceptually about, do I love Allah more? No, I love Allah most. But we don't really see practically. If you want to know what fills your heart, you will know it in the way that you act. There will be symptoms. So for example, a person whose heart is full of money, that it is money that they love most. When that person is put in a situation where they have to choose between Allah and money, they choose money. Now, no one's going to say, yeah, I love Allah, I love money more than Allah. No one who calls himself a believer is going to say that. But when someone has to choose between getting, the latest car or an over-the-top home that involves interest, what do you choose? Is that not a realistic, that's the realistic situation that we're in. No, but I have to have the latest car. So what am I loving most? Even though I have to pay interest to get that car. So yes, it's not about, yes, I'm not going to say, yes, actually I love my car more than Allah, or I love money more than Allah, or I love status more than Allah. No one says that. But we say it with our actions. We say it with our actions. When I want to have a business, and I want to make more money, and I think that if I sell alcohol, I'm going to get more business. What am I saying? What am I loving most? Or I have to take, these huge interest-bearing loans in order to do something with my business. What am I saying I love most? When I love to look nice, and I love to obey fashion, and I love to be beautiful, and I love to, for society to say that I'm beautiful and attractive, And that's filling my heart. But at the same time now, Allah subhanahu, and you will be tested, and that's the point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that this life is a test. What does that even mean? You will be tested specifically in those things that you love. So when I love to look nice, and I love society to say that I'm fashionable, but now Allah comes and says that I'm supposed to dress and act a certain way. I'm supposed to cover a certain way. And it contradicts the other love that I have. You see where I'm going with this? It contradicts society's standard of beauty. It contradicts society's standard of fashion. What's in style? And the question is, what do I choose? When I look at what do I choose, then I know where my love is. Because you will always choose what you love most. And that will be what motivates you. So it's an issue of love. When it's a matter of status that I love, what are people going to think of me? Then I'm going to go out of my way to make sure that I look good to people, regardless of what it means of how I look with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I obey what I love most. That's why we have to be very careful what we fill our hearts with. Because whatever we fill our hearts with becomes the master that we obey. We become a slave to whatever we love most. It's a very simple equation. Whatever I love most is my master. If it's money, then that's my master. If it's fashion, then that's my master. Fashion says, now skinny jeans are in style, we hear and we obey. Now this is the way you're supposed to dress, we hear and we obey. If what I love most is status, then whatever it takes, that's what I'm going to obey. So we have to be so careful. The Prophet ﷺ told us that verily in the body there is a lump of flesh. And if that lump of flesh is set right, then the entire body is set right. And if that lump of flesh is corrupted, then the entire body is corrupted. أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبِ. Verily, and it is the heart. The Prophet ﷺ is telling us in this hadith, what is the master of our actions? What is the master of our body? What is the master of everything else that we're doing in our life? It's what am I filling my heart with? So whatever I love most becomes my master, and I become a slave to it. We say with our tongues that we love Allah and His Messenger most. But the truth is that our hearts are filled with other things. We all love gifts. We love the blessings that beautify our lives. We love our children, our spouses, our parents, our friends. We love our youth and we love our health. We love our homes, our cars, our money, our beauty. But what happens when a gift becomes more than just a gift? What happens when a want becomes a need? A favor becomes a dependency. What happens when a gift is no longer only that? Think about what is a gift. A gift is something that did not come from us. A gift is given and it can be taken. We are not the original owners of a gift. A gift is also not necessary for our survival. And this is key. It comes and it goes. We want and love to receive gifts, but they are not necessary to our existence. We don't depend on them. We don't live to receive them, and we do not die if we don't. They are not our air or our food, but we love them. Who doesn't love the gift? Who doesn't love to receive many gifts? And we ask at Kareem, the most generous, to never deprive us of his gifts. Yet a gift is still not where you place your dependency, nor do you die without them. Remember that there are two places that you can hold a gift. You can hold it in the hand, or you can hold it in the heart. Where do you hold a gift? If someone hands you a gift, where do you hold it? A gift is not held in the heart. It is held in the hand. So when a gift is taken, the loss creates pain to the hand, but not to the heart. And anyone who's lived long enough knows that there is a big difference between pain of the hand and pain of the heart. The pain of the heart is to lose an object of attachment, an object of addiction, an object of absolute dependency. That pain is like no other pain. It isn't normal pain. And that pain is how we will know that we just lost an object of attachment. A gift that was held in the wrong place. The pain of the hand is also pain, but it's different. The pain of the hand is when you lose something, but not something that you were dependent upon. When a gift is taken out of the hand, or it's never given at all, we will feel the normal human pain of loss. We grieve, we cry. Even the prophets, peace be upon them, cried when they lost things that they loved. But the pain is only in the hand. Our heart remains whole and beating. This is because the heart is only for God and God alone. If we examine the things in our lives that cause us the most pain or fear, we can start to pinpoint which gifts have been stored in the wrong place. If not being able to get married, or be with the person we want, have a child, find a job, look a certain way, get a certain degree, or reach a certain status has consumed us, we need to make a change. We need to shift where the gift is being stored. We need to move the gift out of the heart and back to the hand where it belongs. We can love these things. It is human to love, and it's human to want these gifts that we love. But our problem begins when we put the gift in our heart and we put Allah in our hand. Ironically, we start to believe that we can live without Allah. But if we were to lose a gift, we crumble and we can't go on. As a result, we can easily put Allah aside, but our heart cannot live without the gift. In fact, sometimes we even put Allah aside for the sake of the gift. So it becomes easy for us to delay or miss our prayers. But just don't deprive me of my work meeting, my movie, my outing, my shopping, my sale, my class, my party, my basketball game. It's easy to take interest-bearing loans and sell alcohol, but just don't deprive me of my profit margin and my prestigious career. Just don't deprive me of my brand new car and over-the-top home. It's easy to have a haram relationship or to date, but just don't deprive me of the one I love. It's easy to take off hijab or not wear it at all, but don't deprive me of my beauty, my looks, my marriage proposals, my image in front of people. It's easy to put aside the modesty that God says is beautiful, but don't deprive me of my skinny jeans, because society says that that's beautiful. This happens because the gift is in the heart, while Allah is in the hand. And what is in the hand can easily be put aside. What is in the heart is what we cannot live without. And without sacrifice, and we would in fact be willing to sacrifice anything for what is in the heart. But sooner or later, you and I have to ask ourselves, what is it that we really worship? Is it the gift, or is it the giver? The beauty, or the source and definition of beauty? The provision, the money, the provision, or the provider? The creation, or the creator? The tragedy of our choice is that we chain our own necks with attachments, and then we ask why we choke. We put aside our real air, and then we wonder why we can't breathe. We give up our only true food, and then we complain that we're dying of starvation. After all, it's we stick the knife in our chest, and then we cry because it hurts. It hurts so much, but what we have done to ourselves. Allah tells us in the Quran, what is translated as, and whatever affliction befalls you, it is on account of what your hands have wrought, and yet He pardons most of your faults. Yes, what we have done to ourselves. But look at how this ayah ends. Allah says that He pardons most. The word He uses in this ayah is ya'fu, from Allah's attribute al-afu. This denotes not just forgiving or pardoning, but completely erasing. So no matter how many times we stick the knife in our own chest, God can heal us, as if that stab had never happened. Because Allah is al-Jabbar, the one who mends anything. But you have to seek Him. How foolish is a person who exchanges air for a necklace? It's like a person who says, just give me the necklace, just give me the money, just give me that person in my life, just give me the profit margin, and then after that you can take away my air. Suffocate me, but just make sure that I'm wearing the necklace when I die. And the irony of it all is that it is that necklace itself that suffocates us. It is our own objects of attachment, the things which we love as we should only love God, that actually kill us inside. Our problem began because we saw the gift as the air instead of just that, a gift. So in our blindness, we become dependent on the gift. And we put aside the real air. As a result, when that gift is taken back, or it's never given at all, we think that we can't go on. But this is a lie that we tell ourselves until we believe it. But it isn't true. There's only one loss that we can't recover from. There's only one reason that we wouldn't be able to go on, and that is if we lost God in our lives. The irony is that many of us have lost God in our lives, and yet we think that we're still alive. Our false dependencies have deceived us so much. Only God is our survival, not His gifts. God is our support and our only true necessity. Allah says, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدَهُ? Is Allah not enough for His servant? We all have needs and we all have wants. But our true suffering begins when we turn our wants into needs, and our only one true need, God, into a commodity that we think we can do without. Our true suffering begins when we confuse the means and the end. Allah is the only true end. Every other thing is a means, and we will suffer the moment we take our eyes off the end and we get lost in the means. In fact, the true purpose of the gift itself is to bring us to God. Even the gift is a means, a vehicle. For example, doesn't the Prophet ﷺ say that marriage is half of deen? If used correctly, few other parts of life can have such a comprehensive effect on the development of one's character. You can read about qualities like patience and gratitude, mercy, humility, generosity, self-denial, and preferring another to yourself, but you won't develop those qualities until you are put in a situation in which they are tested. Gifts like marriage will be a means to bring you closer to God, so long as they remain a means and not an end. God's gifts will remain a means to Him as long as they are held in the hand, not in the heart. Remember that whatever lives in your heart controls you. It becomes what you strive for and what you're willing to sacrifice anything for, and willing to do anything to keep. It becomes what you depend on at a fundamental level. It is therefore, and it must therefore be something eternal that never tires and never breaks. It must therefore be something that never leaves. There's only one thing like that: our Creator. So now that brings us to the question of how. How do we attain the love and mercy and forgiveness of our Creator? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in one section of the Quran, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّاتٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And hasten, race to forgiveness from your Lord and a garden that's the expanse of the heavens and the earth, prepared for the righteous. The next ayah, Allah goes on to describe who are these people. الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Who spend in the way of Allah during ease and hardship. So that's the first characteristic. And the second characteristic, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and who restrain anger, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and pardon people. And Allah loves the doers of good. Now I'm going to pause there for a moment because this is important. Allah is telling us first, in the first part, in the first ayah I mentioned, about racing towards His forgiveness, about racing towards a Jannah that is the expanse of the heavens and the earth. And then He goes on to tell us how to do that, how to get there. How do we get the forgiveness? سَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. How do we get the maghfirah of our Lord? And the Jannah, عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. He tells us how. First, by spending in the way of Allah, when it's hard and when it's easy, both. And then He says, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, the ones who restrain their anger. The ones who restrain their anger. So here Allah is telling us something that has to do with our interaction with each other. Does restraining anger have anything to do directly with our worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's not directly related to fasting or praying, right? It has to do with our relationship with our families, with our relationship with our friends, with our relationship with our co-workers. It has to do with how we're treating one another. And the next characteristic also has to do with that. And those who pardon people. Here Allah is giving us a ticket to His forgiveness. And it's actually through people. By forgiving people, you get the forgiveness of Allah. Isn't that a pretty good deal? Here you are, you get something that's priceless. Can anyone put a price on the forgiveness of Allah? Is there anyone who can, put a price tag on it? It's worth, this much money or this much wealth. It's priceless. It's the definition of priceless, right? Can you put a price tag on Jannah, Arduha Sama, the Jannah that's expanses the heavens and the earth? Can you put a price tag on that? So here we are, Allah's offering us a deal. We all like a deal, right? We like to go to the mall and get a good deal, right? Everyone likes to get a good deal, even those who don't like to go to the mall, maybe in the back. But the idea is that you still want to get a good deal on your iPad or whatever. Everyone wants a good deal. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making a deal. He's telling you that He's going to give you something priceless for a very small price. So we're not just talking about, an iPad that's originally $1,500 or a laptop or whatever that's $1,500 and you can buy it for $0.01. That's a pretty good deal, right? This is not even like that because we're talking about something priceless. It's not $1,100, $1,500. It's priceless, and it's all it takes is this: the way you treat people, restraining your anger with people, and then forgiving people, pardoning people. You forgive the creation, Allah, the Creator, will forgive you. This is the deal Allah is giving us. There's a very powerful story that we're told. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he was sitting with his companions, and he said to them, there will come in a man from the people of Jannah. He's about to walk in. So when this man walked in, one of the companions in his presence wanted to know what was so special about this man. So he actually went and stayed and lived with the man for a few days and observed him. And he couldn't understand what was so special about this man, because he didn't see anything externally that different, because there was something going on inside. So after a few days, he actually told him that this is what the Prophet ﷺ said about you. I can't really figure out what it is, and you're not up all night praying. You pray some and you sleep some. You're just like the rest of us, it seems like. And you know what the man said? The man said that before I sleep every night, I make sure that I forgive everyone. That I don't go to sleep holding a grudge in my heart. that I go to sleep with a clean heart. And I let go of those grudges. And I let go of those things that I'm holding on against people. And I forgive. We have to be very careful. Is there anyone in this room who doesn't want the forgiveness of Allah? Is there anyone in this room who doesn't need it? You know the Prophet ﷺ said that no one enters Jannah by his deeds but by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And they were surprised. They said, even you, O Rasulullah, and he said, even me, if it were not by the mercy of Allah. So even the Prophet ﷺ needed the mercy of Allah. So can we basically agree that everyone in this room is in desperate need of the forgiveness and mercy of Allah? Okay, we can all agree with that, right? So how is it that we can tell Allah, Ya Allah, I am desperate for your forgiveness, while at the same time I am refusing to forgive so-and-so? Do you see the hypocrisy? We all do it. We tell Allah, Ya Allah, please forgive me, but, Sarah, Saad, Ahmed, Zainab, I'm not going to forgive you. How can we possibly ask Allah and expect that Allah is going to forgive me when I refuse to forgive others? And my wrong against Allah is infinitely worse than any wrong that could have been done against me. Right? This is Allah and me. Like, who am I to not forgive? Allah is saying that He'll forgive, and who am I to not forgive? It's arrogance. And it's completely losing sight of the big picture. Here I am, desperate for the forgiveness of Allah, and yet I'm not willing to forgive another person for small wrongs that are done to me, while every single day I wrong Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by sinning. Moreover, if there's anyone in this room who thinks that they have never wronged another person, then they have a serious problem. Because it's called ghurur, it's called deception, self-deception. If you think that you're perfect and you've never hurt another person, then you have been deceived. The one who's refusing to forgive, it's as if he thinks or she thinks that I have never done anything wrong, and therefore how could anyone wrong me? Right? It's this idea that I am perfect and I am the victim, and because I've never done anything wrong before, then therefore I'm not going to forgive others. But if I am aware of the fact that I mess up all the time, I am wronging people all the time, I am consciously or unconsciously, I wrong Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by sinning all the time. I am desperate of forgiveness from Allah and from others. So who am I to withhold it? Who am I to withhold forgiveness? You have to be very careful in how you treat people. You know why? Because Allah has told us again and again and again in many texts that He will treat you on the Day of Judgment the way you treat other people. Think about that. Many texts to this effect. That the people, if you are a person who does not forgive others, then Allah won't forgive you. If you're a person who is forgiving of others, Allah will forgive you on the Day of Judgment. So it's something to keep in mind. To treat other people as you want Allah to treat you. It's a take-home message. For the rest of your life, think about that. Treat others as you want Allah to treat you. You are desperate for the mercy and forgiveness of Allah. Then give that mercy and forgiveness to others. If you want to hold everyone accountable for every little thing they did to you, be prepared for Allah to do the same. And when Allah holds us accountable, it's serious. If Allah we're told that if Allah starts to hold us actually accountable for the things we've done, then we're doomed. We just ask Allah to forgive and overlook our mistakes, never to hold us accountable. Because if He were to hold us for everything we did, we'd be doomed. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah will not show mercy to a person who does not show mercy to other people. In another hadith, the Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most merciful shows mercy to those who have mercy on others. Show mercy to those on the earth, and the one above the heavens will show mercy to you. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said that kinship, the ties of blood, family, and this is also really ironic and sad, Sometimes when we refuse to forgive or we cut ties, sometimes it's with our own family, right? And the reason that's so scary is because the Prophet ﷺ tells us that Allah has, that kinship, so the ties of kinship, the ties of blood, is connected to the arsh, to the throne of Allah. And it says, whoever severs me, so whoever severs the ties of kinship, then break away from him. And whoever maintains the ties of kinship, then keep connected to him. The mercy of Allah is connected to you keeping connection with the ties of blood, with the ties of kinship. Those uncles and cousins and family member that people haven't talked to in 10 years and all that crazy stuff that we do. That when you cut off, this is cutting off. Allah is saying that His mercy and the tie to His arsh is connected to keeping these ties. One of the most beautiful examples of this is in the story of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. You guys all know the story of when Aisha radiallahu anha was accused of adultery, of being unchaste. Now, do you know that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he's her father, he finds out that one of the people spreading this rumor about his own daughter was a relative of his. And not only was it a relative, but it was a relative who he was financially supporting. Now, what would you do in that situation? Well, the least that anyone would imagine doing in that situation is he withheld financial support. He just withheld financial support. Allah revealed an ayah, a verse, at this occasion. And He says in the ayah, let them pardon and overlook. Allah says, وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ? Simple question. Allah says, at this occasion, let them pardon and overlook. Do you not wish that Allah should forgive you? أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ? See the connection Allah made in this ayah? In this situation, where she's being accused, this is horrible. This is slander of the worst kind. And Allah is making this connection. He's telling Abu Bakr, pardon and overlook. Don't you wish that Allah would forgive you? So here Allah has made that connection between forgiving people and Allah forgiving you. And this is sometimes what people say, but they didn't apologize, so I'm not going to forgive. Do you think that this person apologized to Abu Bakr? No, he didn't apologize. It wasn't about that. Because we think that when we forgive, we're doing it for that person. We're not doing it for that person. You're doing it for you. You're doing it for your own salvation. You see, you have to completely change the way you see it. Because when you forgive, you are not making a transaction with that person, you are making a transaction with Allah. Because it's Allah who says that you forgive this person, I forgive you. It's between me and you. So this is about you and Allah. It isn't about that person. It isn't about whether they deserved it or whether they begged forgiveness or whether this or that or what they did to you. It's about that you are in a desperate need for the forgiveness of Allah, and this is one fast track to get that. Allah has given you a ticket to something priceless. So it's kind of, you start to flip it around. Now whoever hurts you or wrongs you and gives you an opportunity to forgive and get the forgiveness of Allah, you should be sending thank you cards. Because really think about it. Really think about it. Don't just think about it. Really think about it. Step back. The problem is we miss the forest for the trees, sometimes for the leaf. Just step back and look at the big picture. In the big picture, whatever this person did to you, you forgive them, you potentially get Jannah. Is it a good deal? Is it really? Think about it. And you know what Abu Bakr radiallahu anh did in response to this question that the Lord of the worlds is asking him? أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ? Do you not love that Allah would forgive you? He did love that. So you know what? He continued to financially support him and increase the financial support. Because it wasn't about the guy. It was about what he wanted from Allah. Allah asked him, do you not wish that Allah would forgive you? He's one of the ones promised Jannah, but he still knew. Think about it. He still was so desperate for that forgiveness. And yes, he did love for Allah to forgive him, so he forgave that person. The Prophet ﷺ says that he who alleviates the suffering of a brother out of the suffering of this world, Allah will alleviate his suffering from the suffering of the Day of Judgment. And he who finds relief for someone who's hard-pressed, Allah will make things easy for him in the hereafter. And he who conceals the faults of a Muslim, Allah will conceal his faults in this world and in the hereafter. Allah is at the help and the back of a servant so long as the servant is at the aid of his brother. Such a beautiful hadith. You know how when we find out something about someone, oh, I saw her talking to a guy, or did you see what she was wearing, or did you see what he did? And the first thing we want to do is like blast it on Facebook, right? We can't wait to tell everybody. It's like this desire to expose the faults of our brother and our sister, right? Allah is telling us that when you do that, then Allah will expose your faults. And if you think for a moment that you don't have faults, you got more faults than anyone else, because that's in and of itself arrogance. Here, we're taught that if you cover up the faults of your brother or your sister, Allah will cover your faults in this life and the next. And we all need that, because we all have faults. And believe me, if we think we don't have faults, we have the deepest fault. Lastly, how do we attain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How do we get the love of Allah? Allah tells us in a very, very powerful and moving and important hadith Qudsi. Allah Almighty says, I have declared war on anyone who shows enmity to a friend of mine. My slave does not get close to me with anything more beloved than what I have made obligatory upon him. Fara'id. And my slave continues to get close to me with the nawafil, the extra things. I'm going to pause here in the hadith for a moment because there's a very important point here. Sometimes when we start to get involved in activism, we get involved in the MSA, we get involved in we're working on being, we start to get into the deen, right? We want to get closer to Allah. Sometimes what happens is we pick and choose certain things to focus on and we overlook certain things, okay? And it may not just be at the beginning, but someone who's, trying to be more religious. Now the problem here is we sometimes overlook the fara'id, the things which are obligatory, and we focus on the nawafil, the extra things. And that is indicative of insincerity. The reason is this. I'll give you an example. The Prophet ﷺ says the best of you are best to their families. And yet we have people who are, that are, trying to be, more religious in that. And they are very polite to the people at the masjid. They are very polite to the neighbor, very polite to the person at the cash register, but they are worse to their families. They're actually, they treat their families the worst. So they have taken the hadith and flipped it. They think the best of you are those who are best in public, right? Who are best in public. But the Prophet said the opposite, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said the best of you are those who are best to their families. Our first obligation is to our families, and then elsewhere. And so what we do is, because we get more reward from being, nice to those outside in public, so we choose that. We have overstepped the first obligation and we're going to something extra. It's indicative of insincerity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this most. This is the first obligation. We don't overstep that and try to do all these fancy things, and we've neglected those obligatory ones. Another example is when, sometimes you get really involved in planning an event. It might be a protest or some big dinner, and sometimes you might need to stay up really late at a meeting, or stay up really late planning, or maybe while you're at the protest. And guess what happens? You oversleep and you miss Fajr. Because you stayed up really late, but you're working for MSA, but then you miss Fajr. Or you're at a protest and you miss Asr. Do you understand the problem here? What's the problem here? Allah says in this hadith Qudsi that my servant does not get close to me with anything more beloved than the fara'id. Your salah is the way that Allah loves that more. That's the best, that's where we need to be first. We don't overlook that, but that's the best way to get to Allah. And then Allah says, and then my servant continues to do extra things. Do you understand the point here? We have to be very careful that what we're doing for Allah. And Allah says, I love this most. But if we say, no, but I love this most, then who are we really doing it for? Do you understand? Some people just like activism. It makes them feel good. I mean, are there not Christian, Jewish, atheist activists? I mean, everyone who goes to a protest and plans an anti-war protest doesn't even believe in God necessarily. So it doesn't necessarily for God. Sometimes it's our inclination. But we have to remember that we do what Allah loves most and we give that priority. Even if it means, yes, I'm going to give more focus to my family. It's not public. I don't maybe get a lot of praise, but that's what's most beloved to Allah. And then the hadith goes on to say something amazing happens. So this is the recipe. First, the fara'id, the things we solidify those things which Allah loves, which are the obligatory things. And then we add more until Allah loves that servant. And when Allah loves that servant, now here is the consequence of Allah's love. When Allah loves that servant, He says, I become his hearing with which he hears, his seeing with which he sees, his hand with which he strikes, and his foot with which he walks. And if he were to ask me for something, I would surely give it to him. And if he were to ask refuge from me, I would give him refuge. This is what happens when someone takes the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. Focus on the fara'id, adding the nawafil, and then Allah loves that person. Everything that person does becomes a reflection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His hearing, his seeing, his hand, his walking. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when Allah loves a servant, He calls out to Jibreel. And He says, oh Jibreel, I love so-and-so, so love him or her. And then Jibreel alayhi salam calls out, and so then Jibreel loves that person. And then Jibreel calls out to those in the heavens and says, Allah loves so-and-so, so love him or her. And then those in the heavens love that person. And then that person is given acceptance on the earth. Do you understand how this equation works? Where does love come from? Where does the love of people come from? It comes from Allah. It doesn't come from the people. See, we have this strange idea that the more we run after the love of people, the more we attain it. But it doesn't work that way. The more we run after the love of people, the more it actually runs away from us. Love does not come from the people. Love comes from the source. Love comes from Al-Wadud. Allah is the source of love. The one who runs to Allah gains both the love of Allah and the love of people. The one who runs after the people loses both the love of people and the love of Allah. The one who runs after this life loses both this life and the next life. But the one who runs after the hereafter gains both this life and the hereafter. So brothers and sisters, we really need to ask ourselves, what are we running after? What you chase, does it last? Will it last? Does it have any power to do anything for you? Will it help you or will it hurt you when the illusion of this life has passed? We need to ask ourselves before it's too late, what do we really love most? Because only when the love of God is the greatest love of all will every other love in your life, every other matter, every other relationship finally become rectified. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. سبحانك الله وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Yasmin, for that beautiful lecture. I really like the fact that you mentioned that remembrance is a result of love, and that's something that hit me very well. I need you guys to hand in your questions. So there will be volunteers going around passing pens and index cards. So if you have a question, raise your hand, they'll come up to you. They'll take your questions and then you can hand it back to the volunteers so they can bring it up here. And I'll make some announcements in the meantime. First of all, a shout out to the sister who made this dua card. I really love it. I mean, I guess the translation goes out to be, oh Allah, I ask you for your love and the love of those who love you, and for the love of every action which will bring me closer to your love. I really like this card, so if you get a chance, they should be on the registration tables, inshallah. Has nice colors to it too, so it looks nice. Just a few announcements. We have a free hour event coming up. Free hour means that it's on our Queen's College, Mondays and Wednesdays, we have a time where there's no classes. This Wednesday, Mufti Farhan will be the speaker, and it's going to be about Salah. So, it's going to be about, like Salah. We have Al-Maghrib events coming up, complicated A to Z. Modern Women's Fiqh with Sheikh Ali Basuni in NYU. It's going to be May 17th to 19th, and you can register on almaghrib.org. And I really like the fact that they asked me to make the announcements beforehand. Just as a disclaimer, if you come to me during the event from now on to make an announcement, I will refuse to do so because there should be some sort of organization to let me know beforehand. And people do that a lot. You're really busy, people come up to you asking for a lot of favors. I'm just going to say plain no, I don't care who it is. You gotta be mean sometimes. Bayila will be also giving a course, Meaningful Prayer, with Sheikh Abdul Nasser Janda. That's also going to be in NYU. April 12 to 15, and you can register on bayina.com. And I'd also like to thank Student Association for co-sponsoring this event. They gave us $1,500, so I'd like to really thank them for co-sponsoring this event. The current party is SFC, Students for State Change, so thank you. And that's pretty much it. So hand in your index cards so Sister Yasmin had past time, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay. Inshallah, we'll be doing the book selling and signing at 8:55, so we have a couple minutes before that. There was actually a couple questions that I got before the lecture, which I want to cover because I think that it's relevant to everyone, inshallah. One of them had to do with choosing your career, and you know, it's relevant in terms of choosing your career, choosing a spouse, you know, what you want to do with your life in general. And the question, and a lot of times I think that we go about these decisions in the wrong way. What we do sometimes is, we kind of like look at a list of options, of goals, of careers perhaps, and we say, okay, you know, I want to do this, and that's fine. And we get stuck on a particular career, for example, or a particular goal, or a particular person that we want to marry, etc., etc. And we get stuck on that exact thing, and it becomes our goal. So now, in a sense, our goal has changed from being the pleasure of Allah, necessarily, to being, no, it's not the pleasure of Allah, but the ultimate goal now is marrying person XYZ, or being a doctor, or being a speaker, or being a dad, or whatever it happens to be. Now, the reason why this is a subtle point is because we might be saying that we want these things for the sake of Allah, right? No, I want to marry this person for the sake of Allah. No, I want to be a speaker for the sake of Allah. No, I want to be a writer. No, I want to be a doctor for the sake of Allah. And that's great. That's great. But if it really is for the sake of Allah, then you will be open to what Allah wants and not be stuck, regardless, on what you want. So my advice to you practically is that when you're picking a career, you may be inclined towards one direction. I want to be a writer, I want to be a doctor, whatever it is. But please make sure that you're praying istikhara, that your attitude is, Ya Allah, I want to do what pleases you most. Ya Allah, I want what's best for this life and the next. And so guide me to that. And you can take steps. You might think, okay, this is the direction I'm going to go. Go in that direction. Move. But if Allah redirects you, don't get stuck on that. And this happens a lot with marriage proposals, or it happens with attachments to people, attachments to careers, attachments to different things. My point here is that just make sure your ultimate goal isn't being a doctor, or isn't being a da'i, or isn't being a writer, because you don't necessarily know what's best for you and which path Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you in specifically. So be open to essentially what Allah wants from you rather than what you want. Does that make sense? The other question was a question about sincerity. Now, what do you do when you're working for the sake of Allah? You might be an MSA or whatever work you're doing, and you're worrying about your intention. To that, I want to first make very clear that your intention is extremely important. As the Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, the actions are by intention. So you're going to get out of whatever you're doing based on your intention. If your intention of doing the most wonderful act has nothing to do with Allah, you're going to get nothing out of it. So intention is very, very important. But I also don't want you to have that become a tool of shaitan. What I mean by that is sometimes when you're trying to do good, you know, you're trying to start going to the masjid, you're trying to start wearing hijab, you know, you want to start being more regular and careful about your prayers, whatever it is you're trying to do, shaitan might come to you and say, you know, the only reason that you're going to the masjid is because you want people to look at you and say, oh, she's so religious, or he's so religious. The only reason you're praying sunnah is so you can show off. The only reason you're wearing hijab is so everyone will think that you're so religious. So he uses that, but what's his goal? Is he worried about your intention? What's his goal? To get you to not do it at all. He's not telling you because he's worried about you purifying your intention. His goal is to get you not to go to the masjid, to get you not to wear hijab, to get you not to pray. That's his goal. He doesn't care how he gets you to do it. He's smart. You know, he knows what he's doing. He's been doing it for a while. He's not stupid. So he knows what he's doing, and he uses whatever tactic is going to work. Or he's very deceptive. So here we have to be careful, because the response it is true that you should try to have pure intention. You should try to purify your intention, but do not abandon the action out of fear of impure intention. Instead, continue to do your action at the same time struggling to purify your intention. That's key. Don't abandon the action, because then he won. Shaitan wins something, because you still didn't do the action. Instead, realize that we're only human and we're all constantly struggling to purify our intention. You don't get to a point where you're just like, oh, I'm done struggling. I'm an angel now. I transformed, you know. No, it doesn't ever happen that you transform into an angel. Sorry to break any hearts. We're never going to become perfect. We're always going to be struggling. Allah tells us this. يَا أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدَحًا فَمُلَاقِيهِ. That, oh mankind, you are toiling, ever painfully toiling towards your Lord, but you shall meet Him. It is a constant struggle until the day we meet Him. But Allah is Al-Ghafur, Allah is Ar-Rahman, Allah is Ar-Rahim. He is, Al-Halim, He's the most forbearing. He puts up with a lot. He deals with us. Because He knows He created us. He knows that we're not perfect. Stop trying, if you put this standard of perfection for yourself, what that actually does is it can actually be extremely dangerous, because you will never reach it and therefore you become hopeless. Do you understand the point there? If you expect perfection from yourself and others, you are setting yourself up for failure. Because what happens when you realize, oops, I'm not perfect, surprise, then you're like, you know what, I might as well give up. I might as well just stop trying. And that is exactly what Shaitan wants. He wants you to despair. He wants you to give up. And sometimes the way he gets you to give up is by telling you you're not perfect, so you might as well just stop trying. But Allah is not expecting you to be perfect. Let me ask you this question. It's something to reflect about. If Allah were expecting us to be perfect, then why would His most emphasized attribute be forgiveness and mercy? If you were supposed to be perfect, right? Those angels that you were supposed to become. The point is that we are not created to be perfect. We are created, yes, we're going to slip, but we have to keep coming back. And we have to keep trying. And it's only when you give up the fight and you say there's no point in trying and struggling anymore that shaitan wins. But so long as you keep trying, that's all Allah wants from us. He never asked us to be perfect because He created us and He knows that that's not our nature. We know from the hadith that all of the son of Adam are off to make a mistake. They're going to make mistakes, and the best of those are the ones who repent. So if you want to be the best, don't say that I'm going to never make a mistake, because that's not possible. But if you want to be the best, be among those who are always repenting, who are always coming back and always humbling themselves and crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and begging for forgiveness, and don't give up. Because that concept that I need to be perfect in order to do anything, by the way, this is what holds people back a lot of the time. There's two things that often hold people back on the path to Allah, as Ghazali rahimahullah said. The two things are hopelessness and arrogance. Which is interesting, it kind of seem like they're opposite. They have exactly the same effect. When you're hopeless, you say, what's the point? You say, it's the one who says, well, what's the point of wearing hijab? I'm so bad. Or what's the point of praying? I keep sinning. What's the point of coming back to Allah? There's no point. I'm so bad and Allah will never forgive me and I'm so far away. It's hopelessness. So what does it make you do? It makes you stop trying. It stops you on the path to Allah. On the other hand, the one who's arrogant, the one who thinks they're already there, the one who thinks, I'm good, I'm alright, they also stop trying. And they also stop. So both are paralyzing. To think you're already there, you stop trying. To think there's no point because you're never going to get there, you stop trying. But both have the same effect. You stop traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You stop striving on that path. So be very careful of these two. Arrogance and hopelessness. Thinking that you're already okay and thinking that there's no point. We have to be balanced between fear and hope. Are there any other questions? I didn't see the pile. Okay, thank you for asking this question. I'm going to read it and then talk about it. Inshallah. Sister Yasmin, there are some who like to impose what they think Allah wants, acting like they know exactly what Allah wants. Yes, I know that type of person. They want to impose on others using their position. What do you think? Okay. So, Bismillah. Sometimes there is this issue when a woman is speaking. Some people have their opinions about it, and the issue here now, really the important issue is not the fiqhi discussion about women speaking or not speaking in public. The more important issue, which is what I want to get to, because it is a fiqhi discussion and there is disagreement, and the scholars, the majority of the scholars say that. See, in Islam, here's the thing we need to understand, is that when it comes to actions, everything is halal unless it is proven haram. It's not the other way around. People don't need to come and prove that something's halal, they need to prove that it's haram. Do you understand where the burden of proof is? So you don't need to, for example, getting off this stage, I don't say, well, no, it's haram, you have to prove to me it's halal. Right? You don't prove that it's halal to come off the stage. Everything is halal unless there's a proof that it's haram. Okay? So eating an apple is halal unless there's something that says it's haram. Okay? Eating a pear, getting in a car. All of these things are assumed halal unless proven otherwise. So similarly, the burden of proof is not on the person to prove that it's okay for women to speak or that it's okay to do these things, but the burden of proof is on the other side to prove that it's haram. And there is, that, and in terms of that evidence, there's no strong evidence what the scholars say that it is. And so the burden of proof on that side, there isn't sufficient evidence. Similarly, or in addition to that, there are scholars who have done extensive research, have spent years and years, their lives studying the muhaddithat. One of them is Sheikh Akram Nadawi in UK. And you can look up his work. He has written a volume of over 50 books, a 50-plus volume set called Al-Muhaddithat. And it's a extensive study about the female scholars of the past. And he studied their lives, he studied how they taught, he studied who they taught, and what he found in his research. And again, a lot of us, we just do a Google search and we think we're a scholar. His research is actually, and he spent his life studying this, and he wrote 50-plus books about it. So maybe if we could go and read those, and then we can come back and say something. Like, what he found is that the muhaddithats taught both men and women, and the majority of them did not wear niqab, in fact. So this idea that it was always, all of them, they had a niqab, they had a screen, is actually not historically correct. Okay? But sometimes what happens is that again, it's an acceptable disagreement. However, sometimes what we do is that we don't know the manner of disagreement. That what we think is that my opinion, my way or the highway, right? It's what I think or else everyone else is wrong. And that really is the problem. It's okay to agree to disagree. It's okay when the scholars are agreeing to disagree. How can we not agree to disagree? Yeah, it's okay. We can say this is your opinion and this is my opinion, and we're still brothers and we're still sisters and we still respect one another. If Imam Shafi'i is saying that I think my opinion is right, but it may be wrong, then how can I or you say, I think my opinion is right and it is right? It's like, no. We have to have that humility and respect for the disagreement. And it's okay. Again, you don't have to necessarily convince one another, but you do have to respect difference of opinion, and that's crucial. The moment we stop respecting difference of opinion, this is really where we become divided. And we start dividing on these small issues and we miss the big picture. And that's exactly what shaitan wants. It's exactly what he wants. Because Allah says, اعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah together and do not be divided. This is how we're supposed. Yes, it's okay to have disagreements. The scholars had disagreements, but they held on to the rope of Allah together and they were not divided. The moment we start to divide on these things is when our downfall comes. And that's exactly what shaitan wants. Believe me, the people who want to take Islam down, that's how they do it. Have you guys ever heard, back in like 2005, the RAND report? There was like this report that came out from RAND, think tank, military think tank. Anyway, the point of it was, how are we going to deal with this problem of Islam? And the whole methodology that was presented in the paper, and you can Google this, the RAND report, R-A-N-D. The whole methodology proposed was, we have to divide the Muslims in 4 groups. There's the fundamentalists, the traditionalists, the secularists, and the modernists. So what they're trying to do is divide Muslims into different ideologies, which is basically, oh, he has that opinion, she has that opinion, we're separated. And she goes on to say, we have to make sure they don't unite. This is an actual policy paper that you can look up and read. And you have these 4 groups, and we have to make sure to support the modernists. And we have to make sure that the traditionalists and the fundamentalists don't join together. I mean, this is just open. It's not like a hidden agenda. It's an open published paper, policy paper. The idea here is we're falling into that. We're eating that up. That's exactly what we're doing to ourselves. No, he's Salafi, or he's Sufi, or he's this, or he's that. And we have all these labels. And I mean, for example, what I talked about today was something called Tawheed. Tawheed. Everything I talked about today was Tawheed. Tawheed is the oneness of dependence, love, hope, all these things on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But But most of the time when you go to a Tawheed class, you know what they teach? They teach a bunch of labels. They teach, this is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and everybody else is wrong. And it starts becoming, instead of it really being about Allah anymore, it's about all these other groups who are wrong. So it becomes really a class of labels and how to divide the different groups of Muslims. We have lost focus. We have lost focus. We're so focused on, you know, seeing how everyone else is wrong and the other groups are wrong and the other opinions are wrong and only my opinion is right, that we've missed the point. Like, it's not even about Allah anymore. It's just about me being right and you being wrong. And this group is wrong and this group is right. Let's get back to focus. Let's get back to what it is that we're doing here. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah is telling us our purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why we were created. And Allah tells us to do it together, to hold on to that rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Don't be divided by these things. Please, we have to understand and have a spirit of disagreement. And respect for the disagreement that there is between the scholars. And similarly between us. Who are we to not agree to disagree if they agree to disagree? Okay. One other issue related to that is the issue of giving nasiha. Because sometimes we have what I would call the haram police. And I grew up with the haram police, and I know about, like, you know, that kind of mentality. And, you know, we get into that sometimes. When we're on the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we take like different extremes, and we sometimes lose focus. So the haram police are the people who, you know, they have the spirit of nasiha, but they got off track. Okay? And what I mean by that is this. When you see something that somebody is doing that you think is wrong and you want to advise them, okay, this is a beautiful thing, amr bil ma'ruf, nahy anil munkar, and joining good and forbidding evil. But there are a couple things, and then, you know, there's some like recommendations that the scholars give before you give nasiha. Now I want to explain what I mean. I'm not trying to discourage people from helping one another. It's not what I'm trying to do. But we have to be in the right frame of reference and the right state of heart. First thing that they recommend is before you go, so you see someone doing something haram, clearly haram, not just like something that's disagreed about, clearly haram. Let's just make it clear there. First thing you should see, ask yourself this question: is this something where there is a legitimate difference of opinion? See someone praying this way, hands this way, whatever it is. Okay? First ask yourself, is it a legitimate difference of opinion? Is there a legitimate difference of opinion among the scholars? If the answer is yes, you don't need to give them nasiha about it. If there's a legitimate difference of opinion, then that's okay. Okay? Suppose it's something there is no legitimate difference of opinion, they're drinking alcohol. Okay? So then the question is, now the second thing you want to do is first thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are not doing that same sin. So gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And third, and also realizing something. You don't live in that person's shoes. You were not raised in that person's house. You have not gone through what that person goes through. And had you been in that same situation, everything the same as that person, maybe you would have been worse. Remembering that, being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Third, before you go and advise somebody about anything, and it's something that's actually haram, remember and bring to mind your own sins. Remember and bring to mind your own faults. That's what I mean. I'm not talking about like dwelling in sin, but your own faults. What's the point of that? What's the point of that? The point of that isn't to prevent you from advising your brother or sister, because that's our job. We care about one another. The Prophet ﷺ tells us an example of everyone on a ship and the people on the top. There's people on the top, people on the bottom. And the people on the bottom, if they want to get water, and instead of going up and asking the people on top, they start making a hole in the ship. Well, is it only going to affect the people on the bottom? If one person is making a hole in the ship, it affects everybody. So the idea is the people on the top are not going to say, oh, it's not my business, I shouldn't advise them, because they're going to sink too. We need to be advising one another because we love that person and because it affects all of us. But why are we bringing to mind our own faults before we advise another person? The reason is that it puts us in a state of humility. So when we go and advise, we are not advising from a place of self-righteousness and arrogance. That's what I'm talking about when I say the haram police. I'm talking about people who, when they advise one another, they don't advise out of love and concern necessarily, but out of arrogance and self-righteousness. And unfortunately, when you look down at another person, first of all, that nasiha isn't going to be very effective, because nobody likes to feel that someone's looking down on them. No one likes to be judged, right? But at the same time, it actually shows that you have a worse problem than that person. Because arrogance is that disease of the heart that the Prophet ﷺ said that no one will enter Jannah who has an atom's weight of arrogance in their heart before a camel will go through the eye of a needle. Think of a camel, think of a needle, think of the eye of the needle, and that camel going through the eye of that needle. That if a person has arrogance in their heart, even the atom's weight will not enter Jannah until the camel goes through the eye of a needle. Intense. So when I say bring to mind your own faults, it's to put you in a state of humility when you're advising, not in a state of self-righteousness or arrogance. And if at that point, while you're trying to bring to mind your faults, and you can't think of any, then you got a worse problem than the one you're advising. You see the problem? Because any human being who doesn't know their own faults, or worse yet, thinks that they don't have faults, then they have the most deadly of all faults, and that's arrogance. And not just arrogance, but deception, self-deception, ghurur. Okay. We'll start, inshallah, the books in 5 minutes. Okay. So in terms of, there's some questions asking about how do I help this person, somebody who's struggling. And again, you should think about it in that way that if you're standing next to a cliff and there's someone who's blind, or blindfolded, and is running straight towards the cliff, but they don't know that they're headed straight for the cliff. They think they're going into like a pool or something. And you see this. My question to you is, what's your response? Well, one response could be, well, you know what, it's none of my business. Right? That's how some people react. But isn't that heartless? Isn't that heartless to say, yeah, let them fall off the cliff. I'm not going to say anything, it's not my business. So that's the other extreme from the, we'll see how. That's the other extreme from the haram police example. It's that you're not even caring that this person is hurting themselves. So that's not the spirit we should have. But instead, you should want to stop that person from harming themselves, not because you think you're better than them, but because you sincerely care for them and you love them and you want to help them. When you come at it from that place, believe me, it's much more effective. The best thing you can do for a person, of course, first and foremost, is to make dua for them, because Allah is the one who guides. And then thereafter, try to talk to them, connect to them, advise them, but do it from the heart and don't do it from a place of arrogance. Do it from a place of concern, having seen your own faults too. Like you're fully aware that you are just as faulted, but out of love, you want to help them and you want them to help you too. So you have to really, it can't be from arrogance. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you, to help you to advise them and to guide them. Connection is also really important, building a relationship with that person. One of the problems with the haram police is Sometimes it's like people you don't even know, who just like see, who just like come up to you at the masjid and start like, it's not the way nasiha, I mean, really, like, or someone will just like randomly message you on Facebook and, the point here is, okay, that's fine, that's great, but really, like, for nasiha to really be effective, and for it to be really, you know, there's a lot of things. I mean, yes, it should be privately, not like openly. Sometimes you see these people like doing it publicly, you know, comments on somebody's wall, like to shuyukh or something. I mean, that's not the manner of nasiha at all. It should be done privately, not in a demeaning way, etc. But it also is really important to have a connection with that person. You know, it's not like a complete stranger is coming and telling you not to wear nail polish. But it's like, it's going to be a lot more effective if it's somebody that you love and somebody you have a connection with. So building the connection is key to da'wah, essentially, to any kind of da'wah. Should we just end there? Okay, inshallah we'll end there. I want to, basically, I hope that we leave with, you know, some benefit, inshallah. I want to leave you guys with some take-home messages, because I know we talked a lot about a lot of concepts. So I want to sort of boil it down to what I would hope that we take away, if nothing else. One of the things that I hope that we take away is that treat people as you hope that Allah will treat you. Treat people as you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to treat you in this life and on the Day of Judgment. That's first. Second is remember that whatever you love most becomes your master. And that's what you obey, and that's what you become a slave to. So be very careful about what you love most. And be very careful that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if it isn't, and we have these struggles and we have these attachments, if you ask yourself these questions during the talk, what do I think about most? What makes me cry most? What makes me angry most? What makes me most afraid of losing? What causes me most anxiety? It has nothing to do with Allah. The next question is, well, how do I fix that? Hopefully that's the next question. I hope that we start to realize what our attachments are, and what are those things that are competing with our love for Allah. What is the next step? The next step is increase in your remembrance of Allah. Here's the point about love. I use this example in my book, and I think it illustrates this point about how do you get over false attachments. Well, let's look at human beings, back to the human being. You know how they say you never get over someone until you find someone else? Right? So the easiest way, right? To get over someone, the rebound relationship, right? So you don't get over someone until you find someone else. Quickest, easiest way. We will not get over our love and attachment to this life until we find something better. We will not get over our love and attachment for the creation until we find something better. And so the reason why we're so attached and so in love with these things, our money and our status and our people and all the things in our life, is we don't truly know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We haven't yet found something better. And the example I give is, if you take a little kid, and you know, if a little kid sees a commercial about like a toy car and falls in love with the car, and every single day asks his parents, please, I want this car, I want this car, I want this car, and doesn't think about anything else. That child is so in love with the car and can't think of anything else. What happens when that child gets the car? Now the child doesn't want to let go, right? Totally in love with this car. Try taking the car out of that child's hand. Breaking that attachment is going to be really hard, right? Right? But what happens when the child grows up and sees a real car? So he used to be in love with the toy Ferrari, but then he grows up and he sees a real Ferrari. Now try taking that car out of his hand. Is it easy now? He doesn't even care. Like, I see the real thing. What am I gonna, I'm gonna sit and be attached to the toy? It's the same concept. That if we see the real life, if we really see the hereafter, if we really see Jannah khayrun wa abqa, our love and attachment to the toy, to the lesser model called dunya, just easily breaks. We're in dunya, but we're not so in love because we saw the real thing. Dunya is the lesser life. There's a greater life. And finally, there is something greater than the creation. We're so attached to the creation. We're so, like, our life is kind of revolves around, what is this person saying about me? What's this person, think about me? Status, money, where am I going to go tomorrow? What does she do? What does she... And it's because we really don't see the real thing. We don't really see Allah. So our life revolves around the creation because we don't see the Creator. We don't know the Creator. We don't focus on the Creator. But if you find the Creator and you increase in your remembrance of the Creator and your heart is focused on Him, then the creation starts to take its proper place, which is, they're all slaves. We're all slaves. And there's a king. We're all slaves and there's a master. If someone's on their way to meet a king and they stop and see the servant of the king, yeah, salam and everything like that, but how many people are going to sit and waste all their time trying to impress the servant? Trying to beg, for gifts from the servant, beg for love from the servant, beg for, money from the servant, right? You're not going to. Yes, you're nice to the servant, you say salam, but I'm on my way to meet the king. And you see that, and you realize that the king is the one who has all the power, and it's not the servant. But the problem is we don't see the king. We really don't see or know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to we need to institutionalize, we need to really have an increase in our remembrance of Allah every single day. Practically. Make sure that your prayers are set. Practically, leaving this discussion, what are some things you can do when you go home? First and foremost, we said the fara'id. That when you're praying, you are focusing your heart on the real thing. That's the point. Why does Allah tell us 5 times a day, spread out, leave whatever it is you're doing, your work, your school, your party, your movie, whatever it is you're doing, and go refocus. Allah is reminding us, He's bringing us back to refocus on the real thing, the real car. Make sure you're doing that. If you're not doing that, then you're going to get lost. And make sure you're doing it on time. When a doctor gives you a prescription and he says, or she says, take it 3 times a day, you can't go home and say, actually, I'm just going to take it whenever I feel like it. Maybe I'll just take all 3 doses right before I sleep. Not going to work. And you might overdose and hurt yourself. If you are just praying all your prayers right before you sleep, it doesn't work that way. The doctor gave you a prescription because he knows what he's doing. Allah gave us a prescription, fajr, it needs to be at a certain time because He knows what He's doing. It's not just whenever I wake up. It doesn't work like that. So we need to follow the prescription as it is prescribed. And increase in your remembrance through the connection with the Quran, not just reading it, but understanding it and applying it to your life. Believe me, the Quran is about your life today in 2013. It isn't just about 1400 years ago. It isn't just stories of Musa alayhi salam. These are about your life. Find that and connect to the Quran and make sure that you have dhikr throughout your day. Say the adhkar of the morning, say the adhkar before you sleep. Make sure you're remembering Allah a lot. That's how your heart is going to keep looking at the real thing. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I ask you all for your du'as, please. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Yasmin, and Jazakallah khair to all those who came by. I guess with that we're going to conclude our event. So, yeah, Jazakallah khair for those who came by, inshallah. Sister Yasmin is going to do the book signing. I don't want to say right now so people rush and try to trample over each other. It's not going to work for anyone. Yeah, so just follow her and you should know where it is.
They're also, let them know that we're selling them too.
Yeah, so we're selling the books and she's going to sign the books, inshallah. So make a line, guys. Let's just follow her, but don't hurt her. That's how I know.
There's a sister who left her iPhone charger and then I think she left. Do you make an announcement for that sister?
The sister who left her iPhone charger. Okay.
Ron's elected.
I trust him.
Okay. I didn't want that on my conscience.
No, he's good.
I literally just got a call about it like literally 2 minutes ago.
Okay, alhamdulillah, I've been looking for her, and I was like, oh man, she gave it to me, and she left, and I felt really bad. Tell her thank you.
No problem.